Hey, what's going on? It's your boy BT, and I came here to talk some boxing with the thousands of True School Sports subscribers. Now, word to my brethren in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. We're going to talk about that Alabama power, baby. Shout out to Tuscaloosa, Alabama, and all the fine folks over there. Deontay Wilder, Anthony Joshua. This is the second part of my two video series where I'm going to go back and revisit the last fights because there's been so much talk, so much gossip, so much news about everything Joshua Wilder that we don't even talk boxing in regards to Joshua Wilder. So we're going to talk about things that are boxing related in regards to Joshua Wilder because that's what we need to do at this point is just focus on the stylistic matchup that these two are going to pose for each other. And I figured a good way to do this would be to go back to the last fights, which I did. I went back, I rewatched Parker versus Joshua, as you guys saw in the last video. And I also watched Ortiz Wilder a second time, which was great because I really enjoyed that fight. And I didn't score it. I just really watched it more for notes and just I wrote down key points. So we're going to go through them, and I'm going to give you any thoughts I may have on the points that I had that laid in front of me. But this fight right here, man, Deontay Wilder, Luis King Kong Ortiz. To me, everybody says Joshua Klitschko was a modern-day heavyweight classic, but guess what? This was equally as much, as far as the fight itself, a modern-day heavyweight classic. It was a fun fight. We had great exchanges. Wilder was challenged. He had to show heart. In order to survive this onslaught that Ortiz had given him in the middle rounds, and he rallied back, and he showed toughness, and he showed the ability to find the right shot, and he showed patience, he showed poise, he showed what he showed in all of his fights, devastating knockout power. So we're going to go through the fight, positives, negatives, and everything in between. So let's start. In this fight, I think Luis Ortiz laid out the blueprint of how to beat Deontay Wilder. And how you beat Deontay Wilder is by winning the battle of positioning. Ortiz is a very seasoned amateur fighter coming from that, Cuban background, Cuban amateur school of fighting. And he's had over, 300, 400 amateur fights. So we're talking about experience on top of experience when we talk about Luis Ortiz. So you saw him early on in the fight. He's a southpaw. Wilder's an orthodox. So Ortiz would constantly, he'd be a southpaw. He would constantly move to his right, to get away from the right-handed Wilder. And what that was doing was that was giving him the advantage of positioning. And Wilder wasn't really jabbing his way inside early on. So what was happening was Ortiz would jab his way inside, and sometimes Wilder would miss. And when he missed, Ortiz made him pay. Sometimes with counters to the chest, sometimes with counters to the head. But it was a very intelligent and methodical attack that Ortiz brought to the table. You see what I'm saying? So just positioning is how you beat Wilder, and I think Ortiz showed that in this fight. Wilder was patient, and he was poised. In round one, he lacked, like I said, he lacked, the ability. He lacked, just jabbing his way inside to cut that distance. And a lot of times, what happened was Ortiz was getting off first. Ortiz was getting off first because Wilder wasn't jabbing his way inside, and he wasn't getting off first. So what happened was, as a result of these Luis Ortiz combinations, Wilder was just he was kept at bay, and he was constantly having to reset. And, there was even one instance in the round one where because Wilder wasn't able to establish himself early on, Ortiz hit him with a counter left hand. So that was that. Now, one thing you don't understand about Deontay Wilder is this. He's a reactionary fighter. He is a reactionary fighter. He's not a guy, unless you're someone that's like, he knows you can dominate. So, like, if you guys go back and watch the Johan Duepa fight, Chris Arreola, guys like that, he can bulldoze those guys. That's the Stavern second fight. He can bulldoze those guys. So he fought them as such, right? And he knocked them out like some bowling pins. But when Deontay Wilder is fighting a guy that is strong, that is a intelligent fighter, he's a little different. He's a little different. He's more reactionary, and you can neutralize him if you can maintain a steady work rate, which Ortiz is doing. Wilder, what's odd about him is he's a counter puncher, but he doesn't like seeing many punches. What I mean by that is, if you're someone who can find the right shots and you're maintaining that steady work rate, you're going to keep him at bay. And you can even see him. He gets touched something, immediately he retreats. It's not until he lands something of his own that he'll stay there. But part of that too is intelligence on his part, because if you don't like getting hit, which who really likes getting hit, of course you're going to retreat. Of course you're going to go back. So he's more a reactionary fighter, which is why I would say when it comes to fighting those top guys, for the most part, Wilder will adopt the style, which is that of a counterpuncher. You see what I'm saying? So, and that's what he did in this fight with Ortiz. So, yeah, that's that. If Wilder respects your power, because I know this is with Ortiz, and this is another reason why this is kind of the reason why I think he's reluctant to fight Dillian White, because he knows this himself. If Wilder respects your power, it's a lot easier to neutralize him if you have a lot of power. So if you're someone, you don't necessarily have to have a lot of boxing skills, but if you have the kind of power, and we're talking about game-changing power, the kind of power that can change your opponent's perception of the fight with one punch, as many heavyweights do. If you have that kind of power, what's going to happen with Wilder, as we saw in the Ortiz fight, is that he's going to load up a lot less. He's not going to put as much oomph on his punches. You'll see heavy shots here and there, but there'll be less of them. And the less of them there are, the higher chance that you have of winning, because Wilder is not going to outbox you. He's never outboxed anybody outside of Sterling in the first fight. So that's what it is. But the drawback of that is, if he does respect your power, he's not going to load up as much, because he doesn't want to be out of position if he misses. So it's kind of a catch-22 with Wilder when he's doing this. And in many ways, the same things that work against him are some of the things that I would also say are part of his boxing IQ that people don't want to give him credit for. He's a smarter fighter than people want to give him credit for. We'll say that about Wilder. Let's see. And I'll say this too. Joshua I don't think he has Wilder type power, but who really does have Wilder type power in boxing? But he has, I believe, and this is why I think Joshua would ultimately beat Wilder. I think he has a kind of power, along with the fundamentals, that once he touches Wilder won't load up as much, and there's going to be a lot less heavy shots coming Joshua's way. That's just the way I see it. That's just the way I see it. Another thing I know about Wilder is, excessive movement makes him raise his hands, and it opens him up for body shots. So what I mean by this is, Ortiz is a lot different than Joshua. Ortiz boxes on his toes. Not a lot of heavyweights box on their toes and can get on the ring and start moving and doing this and, dipping, slipping, twisting, and turning it. A lot of heavyweights can't do that, but Ortiz can. And what I notice with that is excessive movement. It makes Wilder, kind of, you actually use a high guard. You kind of got to catch when he does it, but if you move around the ring and he can't really time you, what happens is, and happened with Ortiz a couple times, he'll go into a high guard real quick, and you notice a couple times Ortiz would shoot a jab to the body. So that's not something I think Joshua is going to be able to bring out of Wilder, because I never really seen him move like that. But it is something worth noting if he does try to employ that game plan and it does work. So there's that. Wilder will always be in every fight. Like any fight he's in, it doesn't matter how much better a guy is than him. He'll always be in every fight, because he has that George Foreman factor, where he can hit you with any part of his hand and change the fight. And he tries, and he approaches punching and hurting his opponents much like George Foreman did. And what I mean by that is, I had an interview with Evander Holyfield one time, and he used to talk about, George Foreman didn't care where he hit you or what part of his hand he hit you with. So George Foreman would hit you with the side of his hand, the middle of his hand, like the inside part of his hand, the knuckles, the wrist, whatever. He was trying to hit you with any part of his hand, and he didn't care where it landed. And Wilder was doing a lot of the same in the Ortiz fight, especially towards the time of the stoppage. Look at what parts of the hand that Wilder's landing those shots with, and you'll see that he kind of takes the same approach. And aside from that, one thing Wilder has gotten a lot better at over the years is, like I said, like if you go back and you watch his fights, like against Spilka or let's say the first Tavern fight, his punches a lot more. He's throwing a lot more clubbing shots. That's where he got the windmill Wilder thing from, right? But if you go if you go back and look at his last couple fights, look at Gerald Washington, look at the second Tavern fight, look at those fights. Wilder has gotten better just on a fight-by-fight basis as his career has progressed at straightening the punches, getting the leverage on the shots. And he's already dangerous enough when he's doing this. So if he's able to actually throw the punches properly and land on you, as he showed in the Tavern fight, he has that, I would say, legendary knockout power. He has legendary knockout power. I'll say that. So yeah, I think that's probably been the biggest positive about his skill set, is the fact that his punches particularly with his right hand. Rather than being this or this, they've gotten straighter and more effective as years have gone on. So there's that. One thing you gotta understand about Wilder is, there's been fights like you go watch Joe Washington. Hold on, I'm gonna take a sip here real quick. One thing you gotta remember about Wilder, if you go back and watch the Joe Washington fight, the Archer Spilka fight, any fight where he's been down on the cards, right? One thing he does a tremendous job of, and there's something that I caught on to recently. He might use the first 3 or 4 rounds, and he uses those early parts of the fight to see where he can land that right hand. He might not land it right then and then when he wants to, but believe you me, in the first round, second round, third round, fourth round, he is studying your movements, openings, and all that stuff to see where he can land that right hand later. And we've seen like Ortiz fight, Spilka fight, Washington fight, so many different examples of this we can use where, he's getting tagged up early or he's getting outboxed or he's not winning on the cards and boom, right hand, and that's it. That doesn't just happen on accident. In order to land a shot at that top world-class level against these top 10 fighters, these world championship fighters, you need to be able to see what's happening and have a mind to execute those punches. And he's done a great job of doing that. Whether you see it or not, or whether you want to give credit for it or not, it is worth giving him credit for it. And I think that's where AJ can go wrong because AJ is more fundamentally sound. AJ, I believe, is more naturally stronger than Wilder in terms of physical strength. So with that being said, I can see a scenario in the AJ Wilder fight where AJ is out jabbing Wilder. Maybe he's not finding those hard shots and he hasn't hurt Wilder, but he's clearly outboxing him. And he's getting overconfident and, much like in the Parker fight, like I said in my last video, he's stepping in too aggressively with that jab or he's falling in with his feints and boom, Wilder hits him with the right hand and it changes the whole fight. So when you're fighting Wilder, you got to be conscious of what you're doing and you got to be conscious of not giving him too many openings for that right hand and changing your rhythm up and being unpredictable. So that's what it is. I believe the late middle rounds, round 7, 8, round 6, 7, 8. Those rounds right there are the rounds where Wilder's most dangerous because he's had time to study you. He's had time to figure out where he can land that right hand. And by that point in the fight, he's going to know whether or not he can handle your power. So if he feels like if he can handle your power, you're in for a world of hurt. What I will say is this, man. If Joshua can get Wilder hurt, because I saw this in the Ortiz fight when Ortiz had him hurt in the 7th round, Wilder survived. We give him fair play. When you get hurt, the key is just to survive. No matter how you do it, you just survive. But let's keep it trill here on True School Sports. Anthony Joshua is a lot more bigger than Ortiz. He's more physically stronger than Ortiz. So if he hurts Wilder, I think Wilder's have a harder time holding Joshua. So Joshua will be able to muscle him and finish the job. That's what I think will happen if Joshua can get Wilder hurt. When he's hurt going backward, he's terrible. Tough as nails. Really, he really is tough as nails. You gotta give fair play to that. But I think for him, the onus is on him not to get hurt in this fight, or else it's gonna be tough for him. And just ultimately, what I would say, my biggest takeaway from this Wilder Ortiz fight, which was a modern day classic, that I would apply to the Joshua fight is, whether you're outboxing Wilder, and it don't matter if you're schooling him, if you even as much as miss 2 punches in a row, as Ortiz did in the round he got stopped in, Ortiz threw 3 jabs, so he went 1, 2, 3. He threw 3 jabs, and Wilder, for whatever reason, he hadn't really been the best defensively the whole fight, but in that moment, he was able to slip the punches. Said 1, 2, 3, slipped them, and then boom, counter with the right hand. Ortiz is hurt, got knocked down, and from that point forward, it was the beginning of the end. So if you're Joshua, it's going to take a lot of discipline. It's going to take a lot of high-level execution, focus to beat Deontay Wilder because he's a very, very talented heavyweight. Not the most aesthetically pleasing in terms of fundamentals, but just, a guy that knows who he is, knows what to do, knows how to put the butter on his bread and get the fight in his favor and make you fight his fight. So you can't underestimate those things ever with any fighter. And I think Wilder has mastered that. So these two guys, Josh and Wilder, they both learn, subtle things, subtle arts that I think are very, very important in boxing. You know, like I said in my last video, Joshua has learned the art of being just that much better than his opponent and learning how to win rounds different ways and different situations against different styles. You know, just learning how to nick those rounds, which I think you can never put a price on. And then what Wilder has learned how to do is find the openings to set up his best punch, which is the right hand, because he knows he's not coming here to dance and play around and do the electric slide and bachata with you. No, Deontay Wilder is here to fight and knock your damn lights out, and that's what he's doing. And when even if you're in there, you're winning the first 4 or 5 rounds, just know that Wilder is looking to land that right hand. So those are my takeaways from the Ortiz fight, and that's my insight. And that's my insight based on what I saw rewatching it. That's my insight as to what I saw and how that applies to a Joshua fight. If there's any key points I missed here in this video, I want you guys to leave them in the comments down below. Do all that good stuff. You know, take the time to subscribe. Like I say in every single video, you can love me or you can hate me. And I know a lot of you do hate me because I've been really going on your boy Deontay Wilder, but he's a good fighter, man. He's a good champion. You know, best knockout puncher in boxing. You know, but if you want to hate, that's your prerogative. We keep it 100 here on True School Sports, whether you like it or not. So, or you can hate me, but I'm just a kid from Dania. And that's Dania in South Florida if you didn't know. So if you didn't know, get your damn geography up. And until next time, take care, guys.